I used to think that the white of a wedding dress symbolized purity and new beginnings, but as I stood before the mirror on my big day, all I felt was a cold, creeping shiver of dread. My name is Sarah, and I have always been the glue that held my family together. I was the peacemaker, the one who worked 2 jobs to help my brother through college, and the one who stayed up late listening to my mother's endless complaints about her life. I thought they loved me. I thought they wanted my happiness, but as the sun began to set over the garden where I was supposed to say I do, I realized I was nothing more to them than a resource they weren't ready to lose. The morning had started with a strange tension. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes as she zipped up my dress, her hands trembling with a nervous energy that felt more like guilt than excitement. My brother Leo kept pacing the hallway, whispering into his phone. My fiancé, Mark, was the only calm in my storm. He was a kind, successful man who saw me for who I really was, not just a daughter or a sister, but a woman deserving of a life of her own. But to my family, Mark was the enemy. He was the man who was taking me away to a new city, the man who would finally provide me with a world where I didn't have to carry everyone else's burdens. As the music began to play, a soft violin melody that should have felt like a dream, I walked down the aisle. I saw the flowers, the smiling faces of my friends, and Mark waiting for me at the altar with tears in his eyes. But then I saw my family. They weren't in the front row. They were standing in a line at the back of the pavilion, blocking the exit. Just as the officiant opened his mouth to speak, my father stepped forward. He didn't have a smile. He had a folder in his hand and his face was twisted into a mask of false concern. "Stop the ceremony," he shouted, his voice echoing through the silent garden. "We can't let her make this mistake. Sarah, we're staging an intervention. Right here, right now." The gasps from the guests felt like physical blows. My heart didn't just break, it shattered. My own wedding day was being turned into a public trial, and I was the one in the dock. The silence that followed was deafening. I stood at the altar, my hands still clutching Mark's, feeling the warmth of his palm as the only thing keeping me grounded. My father walked toward us, flanked by my mother and Leo. They looked like a unified front, a wall of protection that felt more like a cage. "Sarah," my mother began, her voice dripping with fake honey, "we did this because we love you. We found out the truth about Mark. We couldn't let you marry a liar." They began to throw evidence onto the altar. Bank statements they claimed showed Mark was in massive debt, photos of him with a woman I didn't recognize, letters that suggested he was only marrying me to get to my modest inheritance from my grandmother. My brother Leo stood there nodding solemnly. "I did the research, Sarah. He's been playing you. We had to wait until now so you'd see the gravity of it." I looked at Mark. He looked bewildered, his face pale as he stared at the forged documents. "Sarah, I don't know what this is," he whispered. "I swear to you." For a moment, I felt the old Sarah, the one who always apologized, the one who believed her family knew best, starting to surface. I felt the hot sting of tears, the urge to run and hide. But then I looked at the photos. In one of them, Mark was wearing a watch, a very specific, expensive watch. But the date on the bottom of the photo was from 3 years ago. I knew that watch. I had bought it for my brother, Leo, for his graduation. The realization hit me like a bolt of lightning. This wasn't about Mark's character. This was about their control. They had spent weeks carefully crafting a lie, Photoshop and all, just to ensure I wouldn't leave them. If I married Mark and moved away, who would pay their mortgage? Who would listen to their drama? Who would be their safety net? My heartbreak shifted. The pain didn't disappear, but it crystallized into a sharp, cold strength. "You did all of this?" I asked, my voice low and steady, surprising even myself. I looked at my brother, who flinched. I looked at my father, whose righteous anger was starting to flicker into uncertainty. "You forged these documents and ruined my wedding because you're afraid of losing your meal ticket?" My mother tried to grab my arm. "Don't be dramatic, Sarah. We're saving you." I pulled away, the lace of my sleeves tearing slightly. "No," I said, loud enough for every guest in the back row to hear. "You're not saving me. You're destroying me. And now, I'm going to show everyone the truth you didn't expect me to have." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I reached into the hidden pocket I had asked the seamstress to sew into my wedding dress. I pulled out my phone and turned the volume to the maximum. A week ago, I had installed a security camera in my apartment because things had been going missing. I hadn't checked the cloud storage until that morning, but what I found had been so confusing I didn't want to believe it until this very second. The recording started to play. It was the sound of my mother and Leo in my kitchen while I was at work. If she marries him, the money stops. Leo's voice rang out clearly through the wedding speakers I had linked to my phone. I've got the bank templates ready. We'll just tell her he's a fraud. She's soft. She'll believe us like she always does. She'll crawl back home and we can keep the house. My mother's voice followed. It's for her own good, really. She's better off with us. Just make sure the photos look real. The guests erupted. The intervention was exposed for exactly what it was, a cruel, greedy conspiracy. My father's face turned a deep, sickly purple. My mother began to wail, but this time, nobody moved to comfort her. My brother tried to slip away through the side of the pavilion, but Mark's best man blocked his path. I turned to the officiant. I'm sorry for the interruption, I said, my voice clear and ringing with a power I had never felt before. But I think we have a wedding to finish. I looked at my family, the people I had spent my life serving, and I pointed towards the gate. Get out, I said. You are no longer my family. You are strangers who are trespassing on the happiest day of my life. From this moment on, you are erased from my world. They left under the judgmental stares of 100 people. The silence they left behind was different this time. It was clean. It was empty of their lies. I turned back to Mark, who was looking at me with a new kind of awe. We didn't need the big party or the perfect ceremony anymore. We said our vows right there, amidst the scattered papers and the broken illusions. I learned that day that sometimes you have to let your world burn down to see who is willing to stand in the ashes with you. My revenge wasn't a lawsuit or a public shaming. It was my happiness. It was the life I went on to build with Mark, far away from their toxicity. I am no longer the glue for people who only wanted to break me. I am finally, beautifully whole.